Welcome to the Smart Money Simplified podcast with your host, Brent Mekosh. Brent, good to be with you again. I can't wait to hear what you have in store for this episode.
I'm really excited about today's. Let's try that again.
All right, well,
Sorry,
we'll start
let me
over.
try
I
it
can
again.
start over again, and this way I'll just reintroduce
Yeah.
you in three. Welcome to the Smart Money Simplified podcast with your host, Brent Mekosh. Brent, good to be with you. I can't wait to hear what you got on the table for this episode today.
I'm excited. There's certain people that you meet in the world that you feel an instant connection with, and Mark Fujiwara is one of those guys. Mark is in my business. He's a director over at Baird. He's over in the Silicon Valley area. He also does a lot of other stuff. He's a strategic investor in over a dozen companies himself. He's an international speaker. He recently spoke with the Private Wealth Reset at Oxford Union in England. And this guy was actually just recently in a movie called Big Stages about followed a number of people that were overcoming a fear of public speaking and followed that all the way through the end. But I think more importantly, one of the reasons I wanted to have Mark on today is when we were introduced to each other, you know that there's just people that you have that initial conversation and it goes so deep right away that you kind of get to the essence past all the smoke screens and the games and everything else, and you really feel like you connected with that person. Mark was definitely for me one of those guys, and it made it abundantly clear to me why he's achieved the success in his industry that he has, and why he's also delivering a message I think that is way more powerful than just personal finances and buying and selling companies and all the stuff that we do in the financial world. So with that, Mark, thanks for taking some time. I know you're extremely busy to talk with Bill and I today. What I missed in terms of the intro, I missed a lot, but how would you like to introduce yourself to our guests that are listening to this?
Well, first of all, Brent and Bill, honored to be on here today. Brent, what you just said about it's almost I felt the same way with you, and it's not by chance. It's just I feel like, especially in our business, Brent, I don't meet financial professionals usually where we just go deep right away, and where I have that high level of trust, that mutual trust and respect of each other. But I think both of us were arriving, showing up in the same manner. And it doesn't happen to me too, where I think within the first few minutes, it was just like, I felt like I was talking to a long lost friend, like a long lost close friend, actually, who I could tell anything to. So, uh, you didn't miss much in the intro, but I just wanted to, I just wanted to mention that to you.
Well, I think one of the things that at least I initially or immediately picked up on is that you're a real open book. I mean, you're not holding anything back in terms of describing who you are, what you're trying to do, and you've got a real passion around mental health and resilience. And we've got a lot of things I want to cover with you today, but let's start with that. Why has that become something that is such an important topic and an issue for you to address?
Yeah, mental health and resilience, you're absolutely correct. It actually, I've suffered from mental health struggles all my life. Ever since I can remember, I've felt the depressed, suicide ideations, anxiety. I had a massive panic attack at the age of 23, which has really impacted me in terms of speaking in public, actually, which I love to do because I love teaching and impacting, until, just recently. And that's pretty much what the movie is about. Um, 33 years ago, I have I had a cousin, Carson, uh, about 5 years younger than me. He's like a little brother of mine. And I got the call that that he took his own life. And what happened on that call, I think, is what's really shaped my mission in terms of destigmatizing mental health and supporting others around me, is when my dad told me the news. He said, I want you to do a couple things. One is not blame yourself, but number two is find a way to honor his life, find a way to honor Carson's life, find some good out of this. You know that old saying, life doesn't happen to us, life happens for us. And so since that time, by the way, I didn't tell a soul about my mental health struggles until I did 100 days out of my comfort zone challenge with a business coach, when I was just spiraling massively downhill. And that's when I started talking. I told my cousin, and then she told me that she had the same struggles. And I always thought I still think she's a strong woman, but I always thought, oh, there's no way she would have the same struggles I do. And you're absolutely right, Brent. And it hasn't been like that my entire life to get vulnerable. I used to even say, even though I've donated thousands of dollars to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, when clients would ask me, we have those conversations, what's your cause to the client? And then they ask us, what's our cause? I would say, oh, it's multiple things. Or I'm like you, American, Cancer Society or whatever, or just not, and never ever say mental health, because I feared, this is from the stigmatization, is that they would not want to do business with me if they thought I had all these mental health struggles. So what I've discovered, though, that if I'm not vulnerable, if I'm not vulnerable, I'm not telling the truth. So if somebody asks me, what my cause is, I'm proud to say it. And they will usually ask why. I'll tell you everything there is. Now, I've noticed also conversations where I will be an open book to those people. I was an open book to you. It's those types of people who are genuinely curious. We're curious about each other. And we don't want to know the surface stuff, like what your favorite football team is. We really want to know who you are. And I think one of the big things that we've talked about, Brent, is that I tend to, if there's a client that comes through my office, I don't ever say, hey, let's take a look at your statements, right? Let's talk to me about your asset allocation. Talk to me about your money, your investments. It's generally 1 to 2 questions. It's, hey, how are you really doing today? How are you really doing today? And usually the other question is, tell me about, so they're selling a business. Just tell me about your world. Tell me about your business. Tell me about what's happening. What's keeping you up at night? And those are the conversations where we start off on this deeper level. One of my best friends sold a company for hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's how we started our relationship. It wasn't about the hundreds of millions of dollars. We didn't even talk about that, right? It was about, hey, you exited this company. How are you doing? How are you really doing? Because I know plenty of exited founders who suffer. That's trauma for them, and the mental health gets spiraled. Now, if I didn't start the conversation like that, if I started the conversation, hey, I hear you have a bunch of money in the bank, I'd like to manage it for you, that it would have gone much differently. And I probably wouldn't be a friend of his, right? But I told him he wanted me to share about my charity. This is the type of guy he is. He's, I want to hear every part of your story. You're in a safe place. So I started to share my story. And then in turn, he got vulnerable with me. It's the makings of a very tight friendship right off the bat. So we talk about mental health stuff all the time. And here's the bottom line. If I get vulnerable and they get vulnerable, that potentially can save a life.
Yeah, and I think there's an enormous amount of power that comes with that too, because I do believe that so much of what we're consuming online is not real. And if someone's having a struggle, which everyone does in some capacity, I mean, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, one of the great books, everybody's got the pain box and they're going to fill it. So everybody's dealing with something, but you go onto Facebook, you go onto Instagram, and everybody, they're leading these perfect lives and they're trying to put that out there. And, I learned a very valuable lesson from my wife who works over at Mayo Clinic. And she told me this in the context of speaking to people who themselves or a family member might be undergoing a significant health event. She sees it obviously all the time through her position. She says, everyone asks, how are you doing? And they're going to say good. That's not the right answer because they're not good. There's a stage 4 cancer, or there's you name the issue that might occur. The bigger question is, how can I help? What's happening with you? Just exactly what you said. Exactly what you said.
Yep.
And so many people are hungry for that because, our society and culture has probably always been this way. We just now have the vehicles and the tools to express this, but it's turn the camera around, look at me, look at me, look at me. And when you can finally interact with somebody and share a bit of yourself and learn more about them, I think it's a way to build those relationships extremely, extremely quickly. No question about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me about, we talked about this a little offline, but I want to share it with our listeners. The 100-day challenge.
Mm-hmm.
What got you to that point? and what it was like dealing with that 100 days and that experience and what the lessons were learned coming out of that.
Okay, so there's a happy ending to this story. So I just want to tell you that. So I had gotten a divorce in 2014, and two kids at the time, and I kind of swept all the emotions under the rug because I needed to show up for my kids. And then a couple years after that, I felt I was spiraling. That's when the PTSD was coming into play. And that's when the depression was getting out of hand and anxiety. I knew I had a problem when um, one day I was feeling so anxious and just so sad, traumatized, that I went for a run and I said, I'm going to not stop running until I don't feel these feelings anymore. And I ran for just over 32 miles. And that was a problem. Um, I I had probably the most suicide ideations in this moment, and I was starting finding things out, which got, looking back, got really scary. And I then um, had a call with my business coach, right? And so I said, well, let's put this on hold. I got to talk to my business coach. And so I told my business coach, not exactly that I was, thinking about suicide, but mainly that I was struggling. And she could catch on to it. I've just said everything is just at a standstill. Business is not going well. Um, I feel stuck. And
Can I
so I
ask
said, here's,
kind of inject
yeah,
one
yeah, go
question on
ahead.
that? So, had you not reached out to your business coach at that period of time, and let's say that back then, you and I just met each other, and would I have looked at you and said, "This guy's got it together. You're a successful guy. You're in a great business. You can actually, the fact you can take your body and go run 30 miles shows you're physically in great shape." From the outside looking in at that moment, I'd be like, "Mark's great, man. I don't have to worry about him."
That's a phenomenal question because, and I've done talks on this too, which is whenever I ask somebody, give me 3 words to describe me. I've asked my kids this. I've asked the friends of my kids. I've asked people, friends, family, and it's interesting. There's always a common theme, and the words typically are positive, joyful, happy, energetic. Not like solemn, not depressed, right? And so I'm that guy that comes into the room and they're like, wow, he's the happiest guy in the world. But when you have depression and when there's a stigmatization, especially coming from my cultures, you need to overdo that happiness. And so you get to be really good at that. So yeah, Brent, if we had just met, you would have been just like, no, there's no way, right? There's absolutely no way that uh, I would think, you can line me up in a room of 100 people that you know, and you'd be like, Mark's at the very bottom of the list in terms of having depression. So it's a great point, great question that you made. Yeah, I got on the call and there's a guy named Jia Jung who I'd spoken at our mastermind group, and he did these 100 days of rejection. He was kind of in that same downward spiral as me. And so he went out and for 100 days, he went out and it's a phenomenal TED talk too. So Jaw inspired me, and I told my coach, I said, I want to do, because she saw him too. I said, I want to do what Jaw did, but not rejection. I need to get out of my comfort zone. And she goes, okay, that's great. And I remember because I went to Starbucks, I drank a big coffee, and I just wrote down all the different ways I can get out of my comfort zone. And so I was going from 1 to 100, in fact, 1 to 150, because a lot of those started to become outside my comfort zone that seemed uncomfortable before. You just kind of stretch it. And I'm like, whoa, this is really cool. I ended up like not only running a marathon, but actually running it so fast that I qualified and I actually ran Boston and found my wife because I was dating women in this little small age range, so 10 years younger. And then this is interesting because like number 5 on that list was tell somebody about my mental health struggles. Tell a family member, I think is what it read. And I would look at number 5 every single day. And we're getting into the 90s here. I think we're at 94, 95. And I'm like, I got to do this. This is the most uncomfortable one. If I don't do it now, 100 days is going to go over and I'll just forget about it. So I called my cousin Gail. Gail's like amazingly strong. And yeah, as I mentioned to you, Brent, what was so surprising was that I told her everything. And then she said, you know, all those mental health struggles you have with the depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. And she actually, I think, shook a bottle of pills like this over the phone. And she says, I carry that at all times because I have severe anxiety. And so it was just this cloud that lifted over me. And then I remember I had a client meeting a couple days after, and then that time came. What is your cause? And I said, you know what my cause is? My cause is mental health, suicide prevention. I've donated a ton of money to the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention because my cousin was like a little brother of mine, died from suicide. And I too struggle from mental health struggles. And this conversation, I'll never forget it. This client, who was a prospect at the time, this prospect opened up to me like no other. And it allowed me, because he kept saying, oh, I need this big amount of money. Right? I need this $20 million. I need to sell my company for 20 million because I'm figuring out the taxes. And this is the amount of money. And I'm puzzled by the fact that why do you need all this money when your kids are self-sufficient and you and your wife don't spend that much money? What's behind this? He goes, I just need the security. What it came down to is he had a family member. He had a family member that he was caring for in a way where he'd go over there and just kind of make sure everything's okay. But he had this fear that if he died, that family member who had mental health struggles would hurt himself, would end his own life, or he would not get the care that his brother could provide. And so then it was like, well, you know, Brent, you know how our minds work, right? It's like, sell the company now and we'll just buy an insurance policy on you. And it was like this cloud is lifted because he had never told anyone that. It was just like, I need this sum of money. I need to sell my company for this much. He had it stuck in his head. And so, yeah, he sold the company a lot earlier and got to spend more time with his family. But that was like the opening of just, as you mentioned, just being vulnerable and telling the truth.
Now, when you first started, being more comfortable sharing what you're feeling, and I think there's 2 parts to my question. First, in the people that I've met that are high achievers, I think in many cases can be a little bit more prone to depression and anxiety. First question to you is, why do you think that is? And secondly, or if second is, do you agree with that? So I guess we could start with question number 2. Do you think that's true? And if so, why?
Absolutely 100%. Think it's true. I think out of the population, the high achieving, especially, high achieving entrepreneur, maybe, well, let's just put it in the high achieving spot. I feel because, I'm a high achiever, you're a high achiever, we're all high achievers on this call. What happens is that high achiever will start to rise. Well, they'll start to rise. As you rise, as you probably noted, that when you rise, people don't want to rise. People don't want to rise with you. So it gets lonely. The other thing that high achievers, the assumption that others have on high achievers is that they make a lot of money. And they feel like I would be, I'm much more likely to share with another high achiever about mental health struggles, because there still is a stigmatization of approaching someone that is not a high achiever and just kind of likes being, on cruise control, and saying that oh man, I'm going through some depression here. My mom is in the hospital, and oh, I'm spiraling. And they would not really get me. So I feel there's a loneliness factor. There's also, with high achievers and specifically high achieving entrepreneurs, you have a lot of ups and downs. You have a lot of uncertainties, and uncertainty utilize usually um, uh, can cause, it's like a traumatic experience. And I'm a big believer in trauma as magnifies mental health struggles. Trauma will magnify. So there's a lot of traumas. There's a lot of highs. There's a lot of lows. And again, that leads to more loneliness.
Yeah, you touched on money a little bit, and as a person that is an advocate toward having more of it than less, significantly, because what money does buy you, it buys you optionality. It buys you um, maybe a way to get some other help that you might not have been able to do in the past, whether it's medical or with your business or whatever. So I'm a big fan of money, but I think in our culture, in our society, we've made it. If you ask the average person on the street, you have this amount of money and it's different for everybody what it is, that will make me happy. And the answer is it really won't. It will amplify
Bingo.
personality traits, both good and bad. The more altruistic and the better angels on one shoulder are definitely going to be amplified. If you can't control them, the devils on the other shoulder are going to run wild if they have that kind of money. And so I think that for entrepreneurs or people that have built their business to a point where they can sell it, two things have happened. First, now they've got this thing that they thought was of vital importance that was going to answer all the questions of the world for them, and they realize it doesn't. And then it leaves you the question, what now? And then to
Mhm.
your point, the trauma it took to get there, is, you don't forget that. And there has to be a way to sort of integrate all that to a point where you can be healthy with it, and also a way to redirect your creative energy towards something else, because in many cases these people are incredibly creative.
No, absolutely. You touched upon something which has been, you know, after after my buddy came to me, and we had met and we developed this deep relationship. It's almost that manifestation serendipity where a lot of the exited entrepreneurs would just kind of show up. I was in a mini mastermind and they were all exited entrepreneurs. And there was one actually that had not exited yet, co-founder of a $1 billion company. And in that room, I just started to share my experience with, not the money guy from the exited entrepreneur, but more of just the support and mental health and finding another purpose, identity. And they all said the same thing, which was, and we're talking about like upwards of, I think, a couple 100 million. They all kind of said the same thing. And the thing is that, like, people don't understand us, and they all thought the same thing, which was that number that they were receiving. Oh man, I'm going to be so happy. And it's almost like that's what leads to deterioration of your mental health, is the fact that it isn't happy. Other things mentioned, the friends kind of treat you differently, right? Well, you got all this money now, so you got to pay or whatever, or just they don't know how to approach them, right? And now this exit entrepreneur is like, do you think I'm going to tell those friends that I'm thinking about ending my life, right? Or that I'm just awake at night with all this anxiety and that I don't have a purpose? They'll say boo-hoo, right? Um, Instantly, the gentleman that did not had not sold his company yet, confided in me and said, the reason I'm not selling my company is that I thought about what it would be like to be on the other side. And you see it here. I've seen it with my friends, and I'm actually a little bit fearful. So he's getting offers, but it's not, the offer is to like get the heck out of your company or just kind of being on the sideline right here. And I thought that was fascinating. Because yes, you're absolutely right, Brent. It's a traumatic experience throughout, and it's also a traumatic experience when you exit. and adds more to your loneliness. And think about it. You've been on this path for 10, 20, 30 years, and your whole identity is right here, and your whole purpose is right here. And all of a sudden, you might still be on board, or you might still be, a consultant to the company, but that identity and that purpose is stripped away. Because once you start doing your thing, whatever it is, it's like, oh, I'm going to golf all day, right? That gets old very quickly, right? That gets super old. I had a client actually that he said, I'm going to join the senior PGA tour. He just turned 50 actually. And he would golf a couple times a week or a couple times a day actually. And he discovered something, that all his friends were still working, right? And it got really lonely, so bad that he had a condition which is caused by stress that took him out of the game for a year and a half.
Wow. Yeah.
It's real.
And what you learn too is whether people at a high level are leaving the corporate world, or they've sold their business, or they've made an exit. You do realize that in the business world, every single person is expendable. Everybody. You might.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when I left the when I left the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, I remember, the day I let the partners know that I was going to go, I'd given them my 2 weeks notice, and I did the whole Brent I'm leaving tour for the course of the next 5 or 6 hours. And I went back to the guy that ran the floor at the time, and I said, I can't do this again. I got to leave tomorrow. Because you knew that you had a sense, and many of these people, unfortunately, I'm still close with, but you had a sense it's like you're going to walk out that door, and this thing you've dedicated at that time 10 years of my life to,
Yeah.
the beat goes on. Nobody is, everything as it should. Everything's going to find a way to continue. Now, let me ask you this. Let's talk about the movie, and let's talk about the
Oh,
genesis
yeah.
of the movie that was just released, I believe, 3 days ago. Correct? You had your premiere in Hollywood. Tell me about the movie.
Oh, first off, I want to follow up on your point there. Greatest coach in the world. The greatest coach, I think, overall, since Vince Lombardi, Nick Saban. Greatest coach, Nick
Yeah,
Saban, got replaced
awesome.
in 48 hours.
Yep.
48 hours, they
Yep.
found a replacement. So, okay, so the movie,
Big stages.
yeah, big stages. So, this all started when I started to get my, you know, remove the anxiety and the panic attacks from speaking, to just like I get up there and slay the dragon. So I've started to, I'm big on goals, and I'm big on writing your goals out, because that's a way to manifest it. Not knowing exactly how you're going to get there, but it's like every single day I'll write my goals out. And then one day, a year and a half ago, I wrote down, I want to be featured in a documentary for how I overcame panic attacks and anxiety getting on stage, to speaking on big stages around the world, because I got an invitation to speak at Oxford, got an invitation to speak at a large group in Long Island. And gosh, it was like 2 or 3 days later, a really good friend of mine, who was like my new speaking coach, just called me and said, I don't know if you know this, but I was doing a documentary, and I was supposed to like end it a year ago. The director keeps telling me to end it, and I said, it's just not complete yet. And how would you like to be featured in the documentary about overcoming your panic attacks and anxiety? And it's like, wow, I just wrote that down, and it's the magic of manifestation. So I became a producer and was featured in it, and it was just this amazing process. So it goes into the lives of a few speakers and how they've overcome to get to the big stages. And they all have some sort of obstacle, some sort of resistance that could have, taken them away, and just said, forget it, I'm not going to do that. I'm honored to share that movie with my fellow speakers there. So it has Trisha Brook, who's my speaking coach. I feel like the best speaking coach in the world. And it's her helping us crafting our talk and overcoming these stumbling blocks. And what my part, which was very important to me, which was the focus was on how I overcame panic attacks and anxiety, and also on destigmatizing mental health struggles, because we talk a lot about that in the movie. And Brent, thank you for your support. I know you bought a ticket, and you were, you were far away at the time, so I
Well, I'll
appreciate the
stream it.
support. So
I can stream it, I think,
yeah,
next
you can
month in
stream it,
February.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened out of that was like I did it so because it's all about impact. I want to impact more people, and that was an amazing platform to impact as many people. And it's I didn't think it was going to do so well. It's won Chelsea. It's won like 4 major awards. I can't remember the other thing, but the point is that the purpose behind that for me was, not to get accolades and not to say, hey, I made a movie, but it's about impact. I look and people have come up to me, people that I don't even know, because we've premiered in Chelsea and premiered in Los Angeles, but there's people that I don't even know that just said, you don't know how that changed my life. You don't know how that changed my life, just in terms of how you overcame your panic attacks, how you overcame and are destigmatizing mental health. And they've opened up to me. And then it's always like, okay, you do like a TED Talk or something. You think the people that respond to you by comments on your YouTube are the ones that you're impacting. No, there's plenty of others, or the people that have watched it and how to support others in terms of struggling with mental health.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, let me, did you come up with a formula for how to beat these panic attacks and the anxiety? Or was it
Yeah,
just,
this is
confronting it, facing it head on? How'd you do it?
a combination of both, actually. That's a great question. So, um, before, um, before I, yeah, before I overcame these panic attacks, I had I remember every talk I would do, I would either cancel it or I just like pop a couple of Benadryl in my system. And I remember these are like high school freshmen and sophomores, and I was talking to them about why I love my career in private wealth. And I remember just being so anxious. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm throwing 2 Benadryl down my throat right now because I'm so anxious about this. So, um, a few years ago, Mel Robbins, actually, the Mel Robbins, who I was in her second book, I think. So I became good friends with her. Um, we were in this little community, and I approached her and I said, Mel, how did you overcome your fear of public speaking? Because I know she's very open about the fact that she has suffered panic attacks. And so it was so impactful. She said, Mark, you're empathetic like me, um, but you're doing the same thing that I used to do. She says, I bet if I told you you have to get in front of a stage of 200 entrepreneurs, what's the first thing you think about? Or are you visualizing the talk? What are you visualizing? And I said, I know where you're going with this. I'm visualizing that first massive panic attack I had. She said, oh, that's what I used to do. So it's going to take a while, or it's going to take your mind to make a shift here. I want you to think about the last word you say, on that talk, and then everybody's getting up and giving a standing ovation. And I want you to go a little deeper on that. People are coming up to you, telling that you impacted them. You impacted them. You changed my life. You changed the way I'm going to do business. And really just focus on that, because I can tell you'll put a lot of work into crafting your talk and making sure that it goes smooth. But as you're thinking about the talk, all I want you to think about is the last word. Kind of like overcoming fear of flying. Don't think about the flight, think about it landing, and then you're going to see your family or you're going on vacation. So I kept on doing that. And this is very interesting because I spoke at CEG Worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
which is a bunch of financial advisors. There's about 250 of them. And I actually signed up for this when I was still having panic attacks. It's an uncomfortable, 100. And Jonathan Powell said, okay, you're going to be talking. And, so I started to craft my talk, and I did what Mel said. And what was interesting is that I saw as I visualized a guy on the left side sitting over like this, and he's like laughing, and he's like just like soaking in every word of mine. And then after the talk, he just jumps up and he starts clapping. And I'm also visualizing my friends in the audience too, because I knew several people in the group. So I get up there and talk, and I'm again, all I'm doing, I'm in this mode. I'm focusing on the last word that I'm saying, and the talk is going well. But a few minutes into the talk, I look on the left side, and there's a guy in that same spot leaning over, and he's just like, he can't get enough. He's about to tip his chair over. That's how far much he's leaning in. And again, afterwards, I look over to him, and he jumped out of his chair.
That's awesome.
So that's how you overcome it. And then what happens, Brent and Bill, is that I get up on stage now, and it's like, well, the other thing is I have an alter ego. It's that guy back there, and Kobe.
I thought you guys looked a lot alike.
Yeah. I get that a lot. It's like the brother of the older brother of Kobe, and I will go into that mode. I get fierce. I want to slay the dragon. That's what I think up there is like, this is good. I'm slaying the dragon again. And speaking is one of those, like, we talk about ikigai, we talk about flow. That's when I'm in my element.
Yeah, and you could touch on ikigai really quickly, because I know that you mentioned in the past of your culture not necessarily being as open towards expressing some of these mental health or even emotions in general, but yet you've got some terms that you use that are cultural specific to you. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. So on my arm here, this is Ichigo Ichie, and this is Ikigai. So Ikigai, yes, Ikigai is when you're doing something that checks 4 boxes. When you're doing something you love, something you're great at, something that makes the world a better place, and something that provides your family with capital. It's financial or emotional capital. And that's something my dad always taught me. And this is why I'm in private wealth. And this is why I'm not just doing private wealth. It's because I'm always searching for a higher ikigai. The other one is very important, which is Ichigo Ichie. Ichigo Ichie is the highest level of presence. Highest level of presence, the maximum appreciation for the moment. Now, what does that mean? It means that right now, as we're talking, I've got 5 screens. The only one that's open is you guys. It's like 100% present. I'm only thinking about this moment. I'm not thinking about what we have to eat for dinner. And that's the only way I want to show up, which then becomes so important at 5 o'clock, which is my time with my 4.5-year-old daughter, Stella. We have a magic hour. It's just me and her. And when I'm able to show up highly present to all of you, and that wraps up into how I can show up to her, which is these magic moments where if I'm feeling like I'm not getting present, I'll focus on like the way she's moving her fingers when she's focusing, right? Or I'm focusing on how long her eyelashes are and imperfect they are. And then the last one is shoki, which simply means showing up as your true self, with your true heart, true soul, true mind.
Well, man, I think you do all those things, and like I said, it's only been a few months since we were first introduced, but it's been a real pleasure for me to get to know you a little bit, and I look forward to continuing that journey. Now, people want to reach you. How do people find you for your financial services and planning that you do, and also all your other stuff?
Financial services, FujiwaraBaird.com, and then for anything else, MarkFujiwara.com.
Awesome. And LinkedIn too. I think you're pretty active up on LinkedIn anyway.
LinkedIn as well. Yeah, I got to get back on there. It's been a busy couple of weeks, so
yeah. Well, Mark, hey man, thank you for again for your authenticity. Thank you for taking time out of what I know is an extremely busy day, and I look forward to our next conversation. I can't wait to share this one with people.
Thank you, Brent. Honor, and this was very fun. Thank you very much.
This was a really, really great conversation. And Mark, listening to you talk reminded me of some things that happened in my past. And I was really, really extremely fortunate when I was in high school because I became part of a volunteer group on a helpline. And
Mm,
I had no training in any of this, but I would work this helpline and I would take phone calls, and I took phone calls from people who were in desperate situations or what they perceived as
Mm.
desperate situations. And so I say I was really fortunate to do this because it gave me an early exposure to the fact that it's like we are all a bit of a mess inside, if you will. We all have our struggles. We all have our problems and the things that we try to deal with, but we don't talk about it to anybody ever, really. And it's always struck me as ironic that they would call me an anonymous person. They had no idea that I was a high school kid, and they would talk to me anonymously about it. And I've thought many, many times throughout my life, and I still struggle with this personally now. We need to learn to talk about it with people that we know as opposed to people
yeah.
we don't know.
Yeah, and also I think people that you can trust, and you can trust their intentions and their advice.
Well,
Because
no,
I know,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely, yes. Yes. And
Yeah.
but it's like it's the idea that it's like I realized early on that lots of people around me had problems and troubles that they weren't showing. It took me a long time for me to be able to reveal to other people, people I trust, people I know, that I too have all kinds of troubles. So, Mark, that's a long way for me to say thank you for a dedication to this cause of yours in terms of mental health, because I think the more we can have a dialogue about it, the further along down the road we're going to be as people, progressing as people. That's what I'm trying to get at.
And I think I would add
Yeah.
to that what you did though too, Mark, is you took a massive amount of action. And I everyone is dealing with some level of you know what.
Mm.
Everybody's dealing with that. Um, and I think you have to give yourself, this is only my opinion, but I believe you have to give yourself the grace to occasionally maybe take some time and wallow in it a little bit, but you can't live there. You've got like first you took action in terms of being honest, reaching out with your coach. Then you took massive action in terms of 100 days of all these challenges that put you way out of your comfort zone. And I just think that there's an enormous amount of power in that because there's so many things in our life that we cannot control. We can't even control our own emotional state all the time. But the more that we're willing to take some action, and not only that, but maybe not be afraid of it and dive into it, the more you gain a certain level of mastery that hopefully by the time we're all said and done on this planet and on to whatever comes next, um, there's a lot of lessons that have come through that. So yeah, man, I think what you're doing and the message you've got out there is absolutely fantastic, and can't thank you enough for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, and
Oh,
and underscoring the action part. I completely agree, Brian. Well, we know how to get all of Mark, and I know your contact information is in the show notes, Brent. But just really quickly for folks who are listening to this, if they want to reach out to you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, phone number here at the office is 602-255-0555. Either myself or Andy or Kayla or Susan will pick up the phone. mpadvisorsaz.com or smartmoneysimplified.com, or LinkedIn. Pretty active on LinkedIn. We try to get something up there almost every single day.
That's terrific. Thanks again, Mark. Thanks again, Brent. And for those of you who are listening to this podcast, and maybe this is the first time, this is the kind of quality of conversation that you will get with this podcast. So if you are not a subscriber, this is really simple and really easy. Hit the subscribe button and don't miss another episode of this terrific podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Bill Tucker on behalf of Brent and everybody at MP Advisors. I want to thank you and remind you that you can go out today and you can make it a great day or not. It's your choice. Thanks for listening.